ANA eLearning Academy is brought to you by CDN Graysheet, a trusted source of rare coin and currency valuations since 1963.
Happy National Coin Week. My name is Andy Dickus. I work here at the ANA, and this is the second in a series of National Coin Week e-learning webinars that we put on. We're going to be putting them on all week, so register for the ones coming up here the rest of the week through Saturday. I'd like to thank the Graysheet, who is a generous sponsor of our e-learning program. Thank you for your support, Graysheet. Today we have ANA Life member and longtime Morgan collector George Bazarko, and he's going to be talking about a coin that we all know and love, the Morgan dollar. The last Morgan dollar was produced 100 years ago in 1921, and so we're celebrating the Morgan dollar this week during National Coin Week. You are muted for the presentation, and like I said before, if you have specific questions for George, put them in the Q&A section. If you want to just talk coins, get a chat started, go to the chat room, please. We're going to let George go through his presentation, and then afterwards we can open it up for questions. With that, I am going to pass it over to George Bazarko. George.
Okay, thank you, Andy. So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. So excited to talk to you about Morgan silver dollars. Candidly speaking, the coin I'm probably most passionate about and have been for most of my collecting years. So just a little bit about myself. I live in Northern Arizona today. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. My interest or my coin collecting hobby is thanks to my maternal grandmother, and I actually mentioned it in a slide in the presentation, where she had saved some of the the silver coinage before 1964, which she then gave to my brother and myself. And in that, there were a couple pretty worn silver dollars, but I remember, her giving us that and then encouraging us to look for pennies and other things. And she bought us the Blue Whitman books, etc. So I've been a collector since probably about 5 years old. Like most people, I had a pretty big hiatus during high school, college, and my early professional life, just other interests, etc. And then about 20 years ago, sort of got back into it. And unfortunately, I know that one young numismatist who sent a question, things had changed a little bit professionally and had a little bit more financial wherewithal. So it's allowed me to do some things and change some things. So love coins, work in the financial services industry and in the technology sector of that. So happy to just be with you. And then like Andy said, I'm both a ANA Life member, and then I also like copper coins, the large cents and half cents. So I'm an EAC Life member as well. But welcome and thanks for joining. So the joys of collecting Morgan silver dollars. So first, just a little bit of information about the designer. So George T. Morgan, he was born in Birmingham, England. And actually, I didn't realize this until I was putting the slides together, but his birthday is one day before mine, not the year, but I was born November 25th, so sort of small world that we're within one day of each other in both Sagittariuses. He obviously studied engraving and was viewed as pretty talented early in his career, and was then working at the Royal Mint when he was actually sought out to come initially for just a 6-month trial as a special engraver at the Philadelphia Mint. And as you'll see, he ended up spending the rest of his life working at the Mint and actually ended his career as the chief engraver. So had a pretty storied career with respect to US coins and influencing them. He initially worked for Charles Barber, and then actually who was the chief engraver, and then Charles Barber passed it over to his son, William Barber, the chief engraver role. And then finally, when William Barber passed away, George Morgan finally was asked to become the chief engraver at the Philadelphia Mint. So again, if you're familiar with Barber coinage, then that's actually it links back to Charles and William Barber and probably their work. And then, so like I mentioned, George Morgan passed away in 1925, so had a nice long life, 80 years, especially back then. is pretty remarkable. Almost more than half of that at the U.S. Mint. And then ironically, and we'll talk maybe why it was called the bland dollar during Morgan's lifetime, but he didn't really get the fanfare. Now we all call them Morgan dollars, and I'm sure that'd be a real big badge of honor for him. At the time, they were called the bland dollar, and we'll hit upon that in a second. So why did Morgan dollars get minted? Really it was tied to this Bland-Allison Act. So Bland and Allison were two different politicians. I think one was in Iowa and the other somewhere in one of the western states. And back at the end of the 1870s, they pushed to pass an act to actually basically to prop up the silver bullion industry, for lack of a better term. I don't want to be reading the bullets line for line. So because of that, they passed this Bland-Allison Act. In that legislation, they wanted the Treasury Department to be purchasing on a monthly basis between $2 to $4 million of silver bullion and then converting it into coinage. Again, with the thinking that that was going to help bolster silver prices and the silver mines in the West that were obviously popular earlier in the 1800s. The plan then was to create a coin that had 412.5 grains with a 90% silver, 10% copper composition. And then the profits, and this was one of the first coins that when the mint bought the silver and then converted it to the coin that was released at $1 face value, the difference of what the silver bullion costs and the face value of the coin, the mint got to keep. Prior to that, that profit was usually still passed over to the person that brought in the bullion. So to again, that person who asked the question about some of the current coins and why they're so expensive, there is a profit that the U.S. Mint tries to make to cover their expenses, and they're allowed to do it. That's the only entity that, as they mint, say, a $1 coin, they can release it for $1, and if it costs them 50 cents to make, that 50-cent difference is profit for the U.S. Mint. So just more as an FYI there. So over the course of the life of the Morgan dollar, which I know it looks like it's a really long life from 1878 to 1921, but there was a hiatus from 1904 to 1921. An astounding number of Morgan silver dollars were struck. Actually 650 million is sort of the round number. Of that volume, about half have been melted. And there was a big act, this Pittman Act in 1918 was a big driver of that sale. So at that point, there were so many coins produced and they were sitting in vaults and they were running out of places to store them that the decision was to pass this act to reharvest and pull out, get the silver bullion pulled together. And unfortunately, during that act or during the actions after the Pittman Act got signed, the mint didn't keep very accurate records. So we can't say that of this year, 1 million coins were struck, and we may have that record. Then during the Pittman Act, 500,000 of them were melted. So say only 500,000 were still potentially in circulation, and then you'd have to make some assumptions as to how many coins or how many of that particular year in mintage may have been damaged, had other things that led to their demise. So it adds some of the intrigue, I think, to the Morgan silver set. And then finally, lastly, and we'll talk a little bit more about it, approximately 150 million coins were still stored in Treasury vaults. So be it bank, vaults within the mints, some bank vaults, other places that the government had. And what's good about that is that then has allowed for many, many really fabulous examples of Morgan silver dollars to still be available today. So again, where were the Morgan silver dollars minted? So Philadelphia, which was what they'd call maybe the mother mint, and as even you'd say today, I mean, most of our coins, a large volume of our day-to-day coinage comes from the Philadelphia and Denver mints. That was sort of no different back then. On top of that, the Philadelphia Mint was responsible for all the dies that were used in the different mints. They were the only mint at the time that produced proof coins or proof Morgan dollars, and those were really made for collectors at the time, similar to today, when we have proof sets or special coins that get minted. It's definitely for people like us who are coin junkies or numismatists. And then obviously in many years, Philadelphia produced both a high volume but also very high quality coins. So that's nice for us as collectors. The Carson City Mint had a much shorter sort of minting life, if you will. Obviously, for many of us, we love sort of the Wild West linkage, or I know I do. And then in their case, they too had people who worked in the minting, presses, if you will, or in the mint area, who are passionate about striking the coins. So what's great about that is there are many, many really beautiful Carson City examples of Morgan dollars. Plus, we had the benefit, a lot of them were stored in those vaults that we talked about and weren't released until the 1970s and 80s. So that too just helps to say there's a lot of really great Carson City examples available. The New Orleans Mint struck the coins from 1879 to 1904. The New Orleans Mint is notorious for what we'll call weak strikes. So in this case, the people who worked in the mint either weren't as meticulous, had whatever reason that they didn't maybe pay as much attention to detail. So because of that, a lot of times you'll see New Orleans minted coins that if you look at the obverse, or excuse me, the reverse, the breast feathers will be very, very softly struck or not well defined. Some the hair over the top of the ear of Lady Liberty is also sort of weakly struck or looks just more like a blob, if you will, than a little bit more definition. So that's just sort of one of the traits notorious to the New Orleans Mint. And then you had the San Francisco Mint, which produced over the full life cycle of the Morgan dollars mintage, and similar to the Philadelphia Mint, are viewed as really high volume but also high quality examples. Probably one coin that many of us, if we know a little bit about or have dabbled in Morgans, the 1881S is very plentiful in really high grades. So probably a MS 63, 65, 67 example are pretty easy to find, and they look beautiful. And then lastly, the Denver Mint only produced the coin for 1 year in 1921. I think in that year they cranked out something like 85 million of them. So there are a ton of them available, but and that was just because I think the Denver Mint didn't really come into fruition until the second phase, if you will, of Morgan dollar creation. So that's why there's only that 1 year of mintage there. And then the reason for the break, if you will, from 1904 to 1921 was just truly too many coins had been produced. So there were so many that were already in storage that I'm glad probably Congress or whoever said, hey, we probably need to slow down our production of them. We just don't have the demand, like we're not circulating them. And then finally, also the silver bullion supply had been exhausted. So that explains why there was a nice break, or at least that 17-year break. So with that, just sort of coming back to these Treasury Department releases. So in 1921, at the end of that year, they decided they stopped minting Morgan dollars in the fourth quarter and actually started minting peace dollars. And as Andy kicked off, that's one of the neat things about those two coins in 2021 that we're celebrating the 100 years since Morgan dollars were produced, 100 years since the first peace dollar was produced, and then we're still also highlighting the Eisenhower dollar, which was first minted in 1971. But the Treasury Department said, well, okay, we've got all these coins sitting, in storage. They would inventory them and do other things, but who was usually tapping into some of that reserve, if you will, were banks, in the western part of the United States. And the western part of the United States was still probably a bit more into using the silver coinage. So they would sometimes ask, and the Treasury would release, the number of coins they wanted. Casinos in Nevada were also big users, say for slot machines or for the card games. So they too would be purchasers or come in and say trade in their silver certificates to get physical coins. And then it was also fun for during the holiday season, so Christmas time, if you will, or year-end holidays, winter holidays, to have people, probably grandparents, giving it to their grandkids or parents, say a silver dollar as a stocking stuffer. And to be honest with you, I think that'd be really fun to get even today. So that's how sort of they were distributed early in the 1900s or mid 1900s. Then I think from late 1962 to early 1964, people started to say, hey, there's these beautiful Morgan silver dollars sitting in all these different vaults, a lot of them in 1,000 coin canvas bags. Like, I want to go see if I can get them from like my local bank, who would request them to be shipped to them, or touch base with the Treasury. So they were distributing these coins, like I said, people showing up with paper money or other money and getting the silver coinage. They depleted a good portion of them, but finally in March of 1964 asked that we stop and we don't make it so easy to be able to get those coins that people wanted or people were requesting. And at that point, about 3 million coins were still in the Treasury's possession. So then they sat on those, and it was finally in the early 1970s that there was some talk of, okay, how are we going to finally disperse these remaining 3 million coins? President Nixon signed some legislation, and that led to 5 different these kind of mail order sales that occurred starting in late 1972 until 1974. And during those 5 sales, about 2 million coins were, like I said, dispersed or sold off by the GSA. I think at the time they were a little disappointed. They thought there was going to be more demand, but that wasn't the case. And then they sat on that last million coins till end of, till Jimmy Carter's one of his last years in his presidency, where he again signed legislation that we should, the GSA should look to finally disperse the remaining coins. And with that, they ended up facilitating sales in 1980, and those coins were all finally no longer in the Treasury's possession. So in that case, and one interesting thing about the GSA holdered coins, they have some, and I have a picture in a second, in a black box. And then they had some others in what we call like a blue envelope with more like a cellophane covering. And obviously those are still popular today. The grading services have figured out a way to be able to grade those coins. And some people even like to collect those examples just because of some of the history and then the pedigree for how they were initially dispersed. So on this particular slide, and this is just some of, at least when I think of, like I mentioned it before, large format, sort of more meaty, chunky coins. Obviously, I put all the different silver dollars in that category. Just I think their size and grandeur is very fun. But then there are some other big coins, if you will. So I like the half and large cents. Just thinking how a large cent back in the early 1800s was about the size of a quarter is today. Same thing with a 2-cent piece. And then I still also find intriguing half dollars and some of the other larger gold coins. So on this page, I just have some examples of some of those coins that I just mentioned. At the same time, and I don't want to make it sound like only a big bold coin can be beautiful, but like I said, my passion is the size and more so I just find it more exciting. But here are some other coins that I think are just beautiful examples, beautiful pieces of art. But just if you have them in your hand or if you're holding one that's in a slab, it may not be as fulfilling. So as an example, the $1 gold coin in the upper right of the slide, in this case it's a 3-cent piece, or even an Indian head penny. Again, all beautiful, fabulous coins, but just I may not get as excited with an Indian penny as I would with a Morgan silver dollar, as an example. because of their size. So again, so why do I admire Morgan dollars? So as I mentioned, was fortunate enough that my grandmother introduced coins to myself, and I have an older brother. She gave us, like I said, a jar of pretty much, I guess people would call it, junk silver today, but at the time we were intrigued by it, and there were a couple silver dollars in that container, and just the thought at the time of, like I said, how majestic they were, the silver content, and obviously that had some value. All that made me excited about it. As I've mentioned, I just like the size, and I personally feel both the obverse of the coin and reverse are really beautiful. And even in this case, I know it's a rarity coin that's photographed, and you have Andy to thank. He sent me that image. But the 1893S Morgan dollar, and this is probably a VF20, VF30 example, but it's just a beautiful coin. So even though I know on the cover I had a really high grade Morgan silver dollar, in this particular case, even though it's been circulated, it's just a beautiful coin. I still think, seeing the band and Liberty written there, and the eagle with the arrows and his talons holding those arrows, it's just majestic. So I just love that about this coin. And then lastly, I love the history and who may have handled, like looking at this 1893S, like it may have been dispersed, or was probably dispersed somewhere in the western part of the United States. Who may have had it in their pocket, used it to buy groceries, used it to gamble. I mean, I just think that's so cool. So I love that piece. I love the fact it's close to an ounce of silver. So again, it does have some just intrinsic value, even if it's not in this like a rarity that's shown on this page. And then finally, I do feel it still is a coin that you can assemble different sets at a somewhat reasonable, price point. So meaning you can decide, like I said, now that silver's $25 an ounce, if you wanted to start to collect even lower grade Morgans, you probably need to spend $40 a coin, which depending on where you are in your economic life cycle, that still may be a lot of money, and I don't disagree with that. But at the same time, you could say that's pretty cool to be able to own, say, an 1878 example that's over 140 years old, and have it, like I said, not cost you a fortune to acquire. So those are reasons. Like I said, I love the fact that you have many different mint marks you can chase down, years. And then lastly, I do like the fact that it's a coin that almost every coin dealer will have in their case, like if you go to a coin show or have some available. And then there are many collectors. So it's also something that has liquidity, meaning you may not be buying an example of a coin that has a much smaller following. So then ways to collect. So again, people have approached it where they like to try to put together a complete set. So obviously buying, the very, every year and every mint mark. One thing you could do is just say, hey, I want to pick a year, and then make sure in that case I get the various mint marks that produced it. Depending on your age, you might say, hey, I want to go back, 100 years to my birth year, and that could be a fun way to buy, a coin or coins. The Carson City Morgans are still very popular, so people might want to put together, I call it a Carson City short set. The proof-like or deep mirror proof-like examples. And one interesting thing about that is I believe less than about 10% of the coins that get slabbed or holdered, you get the proof-like or deep mirror proof-like designation. So that too may add to a little bit of the intrigue about why you may be chasing a coin like that. Plus, it's really cool to see the reflective surfaces, even maybe being able to see something in the field of the coin, as well as sometimes they have that kind of black and white look, which is fun. Obviously, if you're a type coin collector, then you can just look to get one really nice high grade example. Somebody asked earlier about toned coins, and I do like those. So you can get them either crescent toned or rainbow toned in the crescent, or more of the surface of the coin. And then finally, you might just have like a favorite date that you get passionate about. I like the 1881 because, as we talked about, a lot of their coins were sort of softly struck. And if you start to look at some of the higher grades, it has what I'd call a hockey stick with the price going up in the higher grades. I had a buddy when I lived in Minnesota who loved the 1884S, and I think it was for the same reason, that it was a hard coin to find as you got into the high AU mint state grades. And as I mentioned on a prior slide, the middle photograph is one of those GSA coins that was released at the time. It came in a blue envelope with that piece of cellophane around the coin and that little GSA token. In this particular case, it's graded by NGC, where they've housed it in a plastic holder that they've put on the coin. The GSA took the lower graded coins, and that's how they dispersed those examples. The coin to the right of it, in the black holder that says Carson City and uncirculated silver, those were, again, the GSA holder used when it came to what they felt were higher grade coins. Ironically, and in this particular picture, so the uncirculated designation over silver dollar was for a coin that was pretty much white, so it didn't have toning. If you see one of these holders that just says Carson City at the top of the coin and then silver dollar on the bottom, that's usually ones that had toning on it. So like I said, if you like toned coins, they were sort of downplaying it as maybe not as favorable, even though it wasn't a circulated coin. It was just that it got toned in the way it was stored. So sort of interesting little factoid there. So then just how I've collected, and I have made changes in circulated coins through my collection, but I have put together a complete set. I'm still missing, and probably will never have, an 1895 example, because that was one that was minted only as a proof coin, and even at a very low grade, it's very cost prohibitive. Obviously, I've also then played around with the Carson City set, just again liking the fact that sort of the Wild West linkage. I like the tone coins, and I've even really loved to find some of those NGC used to put a little star around coins that they felt just had beautiful eye appeal, and they did that a lot with tone coins, and sometimes just really beautiful blast white examples. So I've enjoyed that. I've dabbled in the GSAs, both the blue envelope and black box variants. And then lastly, and I still fall victim to it. If I go to a coin show, I almost always bring at least one Morgan silver dollar home, even if it's a very generic, simple year, just because if I'm walking around and I just see some coin that catches my eye and the dealer's not asking for too big of a premium, I have a hard time, if I feel right, to not purchase the coin and just add it to my collection, if you will. So there's that piece, and with that, that's my presentation, and I'd love to open it up. I know there are some questions, it looks like, sitting in the queue. So should we go to those first, and I can even just answer them, Andy, and then?
Yeah, I can just kind of read them out here for you. It would be helpful if you could cover cleaning and how to identify a cleaned Morgan.
So great question, and thanks for that question, Jeffrey. So personally, so you'll hear dealers talk about dipping coins, and I don't know exactly what the solvent is. I have never done that, and I don't really want to. I mean, the concern could be, I mean, obviously you're trying to take the oxidation off, but you're probably, in my opinion, starting to degrade a little bit of the silver and copper of the coin. So that's one piece. That's my personal view on cleaning. You want to be careful. I mean, I do think if you go to a coin show and you're looking at coins, you should try to educate yourself. Do you think it's been dipped? Do you think if it was dipped, it was dipped, very, very professionally, meaning they just truly tried to take a little bit of the top oxidation off, versus really trying to have the chemical degrade? silver of the coin. And then, I mean, I've been burned. So I guess just coming back, and maybe I want to make sure I'm answering your question. When you buy one of those shiny coins, you run the risk, and it looks like, this person then sent it in to get holdered either, at one of the grading services, and it gets sent back that, they looked at it and probably under a magnifying glass and feel like, oh yeah, the surface of the coin is degraded. So I can't tell you exactly what's the easiest way under a glass to figure that out. But one thing you may want to consider is it worth taking the risk, buying a coin, sending it in, and spending the whatever dollar amount it is, 20, 30, 50 bucks to get it graded, or just, buy a graded coin. But if it looks too good sometimes to be true, it probably is. I know they talk about whizzing coins, where that was where a dealer would take truly like a metal brush and try to gently clean off the oxidation, but then you could see brush marks. So you just sort of
Always
buyer beware. Oh, go ahead, Andy. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying that's always a no-no, right?
Yeah, that's a no-no. That's a no-no. But that's a tough one. I mean, I think you just want to educate yourself. I know Andy mentioned that there's an example of the different grades and maybe things to look at, and I know there are other tools the ANA has. Just the more you can educate yourself. But I would, if it looks too good to be true, be prepared it may be too good to be true. Is sort of my simple. And even if you buy a holdered coin, and that's where some friends of mine who like Morgans or other coins are like, always buy the coin, not the holder. So if you see something that's a MS63, but you're like, boy, that is a gorgeous coin, and you feel great about it, then don't worry that it's in an MS63 holder. It probably is a great coin, and whoever's going to want to buy it from you down the road is going to think the same thing, because it's eye appeal and all that other stuff is just so great about it, and strike. So maybe too long of an answer. Thanks.
No, very thorough. Here's kind of an interesting question. I didn't know anything about this, but there's a ton of Morgan dollars in proof-like condition, but there aren't really many peace dollars in proof-like condition. Do you know what changed? It's kind of an interesting question.
So I don't know for sure. I mean, so I'm gonna speculate. So the 1921 peace dollar initially, my understanding, the dies were made such that, that's why they call it a high relief, is I think they initially had the dies such that when they minted the coin, there was more silver flow. They realized that was a little harder to produce and mass produce. So they I wouldn't say simplified the die, because that's probably not the right term. They just didn't make them as pronounced. And I wonder if because of the peace dollars, and a lot of them seem to be softer strikes, that may be part of the reason why you don't have as many, say, proof-like examples. I don't know if somebody else on the line, maybe more of a peace dollar collector, has some more insights on that. But I think it's partially the dies themselves. Sometimes even the dies or the peace dollars look like they had a little bit more oil on them, so maybe they also had the planchets cleaned slightly differently than some of the Morgan dollars. I wish I knew more about that, so I'm sorry.
That's all right. And then just to go with the theme proof, do you have anything to say about branchment proofs and specimen strikes?
So meaning, I mean, I think if you think of a Carson City, my understanding is, I didn't think Carson City produced proof coins. I mean, if it's a specimen, they could have, like, said at the beginning of like a mintage, just make a few coins maybe that they were giving to people. Those were probably more thoughtfully made, like if they were going to give it to the governor or want to ship something to the mint director, etc. And probably all that meant is they took more care in making sure the dies were set correctly. They had the coin presses or come together to really make sure the silver flowed, etc. So at least that's what I think when I think of the branchment. If I understand the question, I think if the Philadelphia Mint was making proof coins, then again, because they were for collectors, I think they paid a much more attention to detail. Probably struck some of those coins with really fresh dies, and then would use the dies to not create the proof coins, but say the circulated ones, etc. So I think that's what the question was, and hopefully I'm answering it correctly.
Yeah, I would say so. Someone asked about, would you do any simple cleaning or polishing? I think I know the answer to that one.
I have not. I would just not recommend it.
No. I didn't know about this. I don't know if you have any knowledge on this, George, but Mr. Redfield's hoard.
So I know of the Redfield hoard.
Okay.
I don't know exactly his background. Meaning, was he like a casino person? I just don't know that off the top of my head. I know they came. So I think it was this company called Capital. They call them capital holders. I thought they were dispersed, and I don't even know exactly when, if it was in the early 80s or late 70s, but they had smaller holders, so not as large as the GSA, closer to in size to the, like say an NGC or PCGS slabbed coin, and they generically put like Mint State 65 or Mint State 60 or uncirculated example. And I think if they felt it was a 65 example, they had it with like a red background around the coin, and with the holder. If it was a lower grade, I believe it had a black or like a dark blue.
George, a
And
couple of people have said that evidently the holder was called a Paramount holder.
Oh, Paramount. Okay, that's probably correct. So like I said, I'm just not an expert. So thank you for that, Andy.
No, we're having some interesting conversation in the chat room. So
okay.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
No, and I appreciate that. So and like I said, and I'm guessing Paramount is then who dispersed that particular or those coins, and people bought them, and I think there's still a following of that. I mean, you'll see them also at coin shows. Not many, not as prolific as say GSAs in my opinion, but you'll see coins in those Paramount holders, those red or like black, dark blue. And again, they're sort of fun to buy. But sometimes you will find like what would you think is a 65 example, and you agree with the grade that they gave them. So thanks.
Yeah, George, how about dimples? Established criteria, depth of the mirrors is what this member is asking. Someone just commented, Redfield was a wealthy hermit who bought bags of Morgans. That's awesome.
Okay, that's great. So so thank you for that.
Can you comment on the established criteria for dimples and kind of your general sense of what deep mirror proof like entails?
Yeah, so from my vantage point, I guess I'd say it's a lot like our proof coins of today. So meaning, at least when I've looked at dimples at coin shows and dealer cases, or they've even let me hold them. Traditionally, like Lady Liberty's face has that kind of it's not glossy, that's not the right term. It's got that kind of silvery, but oh my gosh. So the bottom of the coin is very shiny and just truly you can't see really any hair marks or marks on it. And then the elevated portion, so say in this case, Lady Liberty, her face has that kind of like I said, like a proof coin, like that kind of burnished finish. And like I said, if you rotate it around, you'll be able to see, like I said, in the lower points, that really clean, shiny. You probably will be able to see maybe a reflection of, not like your face, like you're looking in a mirror per se, but some examples could get close to that. But you can make out, say, the colors if you had a colored shirt on, things to that effect. Obviously, if you flip it, it's the same thing, that the elevated parts of the eagle has that kind of burnished, look. I think some people call it black and white, where you could just sort of see the differences of the surfaces of the coin. I know I've seen some people on eBay where they'll put the coin down next to like a newspaper to show you that you could see some of the reflection of the coin. I'm not aware of, if PCGS is grading one a dimple, is there some criteria they use, that they put a ruler down, and if they think they can see something, say, an inch away, that helps to define that it's a deep mirror proof like. But to me, they're just very striking examples like I said, beautiful and probably produced early in the dye's life is going to be my educated guess. And then as the dye gets used a little bit more, it loses some of its efficacy, and that means some of the coins aren't as sharply struck, etc.
Sorry, I lost my place here. Does toning increase the price of a coin? I would imagine that answer is yes, George.
It is. I mean, but I'd caveat it this way: just because a coin has toning doesn't mean it's automatically going to command a premium. So I think it probably depends on the type of toning. Does it add probably to the eye appeal or intrigue of the coin? Then you're going to see a price increase. So just I'd factor that in. Like if you go to a coin show and there's a PCGS coin and a 63 holder that's toned, but doesn't seem to command a premium, and there's another one that has like an amazing crescent with blues and greens, and it's selling for double or triple what you think it should be worth. It's probably because if you've had them side by side, you look at one and say interesting, but it's just showing some of its oxidation, whereas the other one, it's interesting, but it really, to the beauty to that person's, the eye of that beholder is, wow, it's really adding to the intrigue and fascination of that coin. Just my answer.
Yeah, great, thank you. Another person is asking here, at what price point would you only want to get a slabbed Morgan rather than a raw?
Well, so I think most 63s are selling now for like what, $50, $60. So if you went to a coin show and you're buying a coin and you think it's a 63 or a 64, and buying it raw, the dealer wants $40, and then there's, right in his case next to it, he's got the same year of mint mark in a PCGS 63 holder, or maybe not even PCGS, in one of the grading services you like, and he wants 55. I might argue, is it worth buying the raw coin and then sending it in and hoping it gets a 64 that may offset it, or is it just better to buy the 63? That's how I might look at it. Now that might not be the best example, because somebody say that that's a pretty generic coin, and why would you even, you shouldn't even think of sending it in, just buy a slab one. But like I said, I'd be careful. That one person who asked and maybe felt he sent coins in and they came back details, you want to be thoughtful so you're not putting yourself at risk. I know some people like to play the risk, the game of risk, if you will, that I can buy the coin, get it slabbed, and that's going to add value to it. But I think a lot of us who've tried that have a few examples of when it worked in our favor and a few when it didn't, and you just got to decide what's your tolerance for that.
Somebody's again asking about VAMs. I don't know how strictly you collect your Morgans by VAMs, but can you discuss just collecting by VAMs? And I think I know about a resource to easily identify varieties, because I don't know if you're familiar with, or you're probably familiar with, but use a VAM World, that the website that's run by a bunch of different Morgan guys, I guess. But do you know of any resources or how to collect by VAMs where you can kind of tell the different varieties?
So again, I haven't truly studied that. I do know there are books about the VAMs and how they're defined, and I've even seen like a VAM price guide over the years, like at coin shows. I know some people would say, excuse me, it's just like in any other coins, you could probably do some cherry picking. If you know which VAMs are desirable, but may not be that widely known or widely found, then you could be looking at somebody's, say, generic coins or generic Morgan dollars and be like, oh, I found one that isn't worth the gray sheet price at what grade I think it is, but it's worth 3 times more, and the dealer may sell it to you at the gray sheet price, and like I said, you can walk away and confirm it, the attribution is correct and now make money, or at least be proud of yourself for figuring out, that particular piece. I just haven't put the time in there. Like I said, really the only VAM when I think of my collection is that comes to mind is the 1891 CC. And I have both, a clean example and then one of the Spitting Eagles that has that little, like I said, piece of a die break, but it's right by the eagle's beak, and that's why they had the name of Spitting Eagle. I didn't get into the whole alligator eye for like the 1887 Morgan dollar, or there's like a Hot Lips one that I'm aware of, some other things. So it's just a part of the collecting. I haven't gone down that path, but there's definitely fun to be, things to be fun things about it. And there could be, like I said, probably more cherry picking in some of that area, I think, than just trying to buy nice Morgan dollars.
And I'll kind of piggyback off what George just said, and just mention some additional resources. Again, VAM World, it's Van Allen, and what's M again? Does anybody know out there?
Oh,
Van Allen and
like not Mathis or something like that. Yeah, let's see if somebody knows.
But anyway, it's a way of cataloging Morgan and I believe peace dollars as well.
Yeah.
So Van World, check out vanworld.com. Malice.
Okay, Malice. Yep.
Mallis, M-A-L-L-I-S. Thank you, Robert. It's a way of numbering Morgan dollars, basically. So check out vanworld.com. Also, we had another presentation on Morgan dollars that's actually on our website by now, by Michael Fay, who edits the book and has written parts of the book and all that. And he gets a lot more down into the weeds regarding the different VAMs and all that. We also, if you check out our Morgan dollar resources on money.org, we have a section. We've got our online exhibit with a lot of stuff that was not donated, I wish, loaned by Michael Fay. And it gets, I think we've got a Scarface in there. We've got a Hot Lips. We've got all these different kind of varieties. It's a cool exhibit that we actually have here at the museum, but we've produced it in a digital format. So there's resources out there for you.
Yep.
Okay, moving on.
Yeah. Oh,
this is a hoard I know about. The Binion hoard. Are those coins worth more money?
My understanding, he was a casino owner, if I'm not mistaken, in the West or in Vegas, and I think he just had buckets, if I remember correctly, of silver dollars, and I think NGC did sell them. I don't know exactly when, but and they put them in holders that they had like Binion collection on them, and they sold them both as just uncirculated examples, which they didn't grade, and then others that they put numeric grades on, 63, 64. But Andy, you probably know a little bit more about it. So yes, it's a pretty well-known hoard. I don't know how many coins he had. I know I was looking at the chat, and that Redfield had, they said, $100,000 of coins sitting in his basement. So go ahead and chime in.
Wasn't there a murder involved? And it's kind of an interesting tale. I read about it a while back, but no, I'm not an expert on it. I just know that Binion's was always the casino that my dad went to when he went out to Las Vegas. But
yeah.
Here's an interesting question. What dates do you feel offer the most opportunity for a budget-minded numismatist?
Well, so that's a tough one. So you probably should, if you can, I would say, look at some of the scarcer dates. I mean, so most coin dealers back whenever would say, on any series you want to put together, buy the keys, right? Because the theory is if today, the key date's $10 and a common coin's 1, most people like to say, well, let me get the 10, if I have $10 to spend, let me spend $10 on the 10 common coins so I can say fill in my collection, or back in the day, if you had one of those Whitman books, fill in the holes. But the other logic would say, well, buy the $10 coin because if all the coins appreciate, the $10 coin may become 20, and even it may appreciate more than those $1 coins. So using that logic, and again, what might be scarcer and have more collector interest, I would say try to look at some of the tougher dates in the series. I mean, and look to acquire, like everybody says, by the best example your price point will allow, and be patient. I mean, that's the other thing. If you're looking for I'm going to make it an 1888 try to find an example that has a good strike, a nice eye appeal, and that may mean you're going to the coin show or wherever you're looking for your coins, or on eBay, that you may need to pass on the first example you see that's priced right, because it just may not have those other attributes. And you'll find the coin. I mean, that's the one thing I always try to tell myself. There are hundreds of coins, thousands of coins out there, even in some of the older ones. So just be patient and stick to the price point you feel comfortable with, what you think you want to pay, etc. But that'd be my advice to that question.
All right, everybody. I think we're going to wrap it up. I appreciate it, George. This is a great presentation. I learned a lot, and I appreciate people going into the. Oh, here's one more question. What's your favorite CC Morgan, like year?
I probably would say the 1881, and it's low mintage. You can find some nice examples and not yet off the charts expensive. I mean, the 79cc is romantic, but really expensive. The 89cc is a really tough coin to find. Some of the 90, 91, 93, 90, 91, 92, 93 cc's are slightly harder, but I like the 81cc. That's probably the one I'd hang my hat on.
Cool.
So thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, George. We appreciate the presentation. Again, I learned a lot. I hope everybody else did too. I'd like to thank Graysheet again for being the sponsor for our eLearning Academy. And again, this is National Coin Week. We celebrated each third full week in April. And we've got presentations, including tomorrow. We're going to have a presentation on the Eisenhower dollar. We're going to have a presentation on Thursday about the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. I'm going to be doing a little spiel on Saturday about the history of National Coin Week. But I appreciate everybody for joining us today. Register for future seminars. I also have to make a plug here. We are offering a special throughout Saturday, the 24th, for National Coin Week. If you are not a member of our association, we're offering a digital membership for $5 with digital access to our magazine and a bunch of other ANA benefits. If you'd like the magazine mailed to your home, it's only $20 instead of $46. So please take advantage of that offer by just going to money.org or the National Coin Week page, and we'll get you set up, and we'd love to have you as a member. Again, thank you to Graysheet. Join us throughout the week for more e-learning presentations, and have a nice evening.